What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Panthers Nation Network here at Locker Room Charlotte, like we have been all season long. We've at least showed up. We're here every week. The Panthers, that's another story. I mean, at least they showed some life this time in the first quarter.
Right, right. I mean, it was fun. Like I said, that's gonna be the banner we hang up for the season. You know
Oh,
what I'm
yeah.
saying? Led 14-0 on the Miami Dolphins. Seeing that one going around, I'm proud of it. I'm not gonna lie. I went through the rest of that game happy that like yeah, bro, we had a chance at one point. I'm like, and I was like, after that, I was cool. I'm like, bro, I know what's about to happen. I know they about to put up 40.
Yeah,
They did. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, I did like the fact that we switched it up offensively, had a little bit more, umph to us. Bryce definitely made some plays that definitely reminds you of the guy that we've seen before.
yeah.
You're starting to see more of him coming along each and every week. And I think that, this process has been a slow one, but we starting to, hopefully we start to move in the right direction right now.
I think so. JB, what was your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, coming out the back, 14 zap against the Miami Dolphins was a good look. Chuba getting in there first, Thielen going in second, and then it turned into SeaWorld. Dolphins rattled off, another 4 to 5 touchdowns right after that. So I mean, that's what we expected. I think one thing I was very proud of was the fact that Bryce showed life. Bryce showed a lot of confidence in those first couple of series. Again, a lot of work to be done. Looking forward to this bye week, getting us some rest. Hopefully, we can get back some of those bodies we've been missing on the defensive side of the ball. Maybe Corbett coming in, giving us a little bit more meat on the bone as far as the offensive line. But yeah, and it looks like we got a new play call in the building as well.
Look, I told you it was gonna happen. If we go back, we can pull up the tapes from about 3 4 weeks ago. You asked me, I asked y'all when you thought it was gonna happen. You said when you wanted it to happen. I told you it was gonna be right before the bye week. I'm just saying. Now I want to pitch this though. I've got a little conspiracy for you. I said something smart. Now I'm gonna say something dumb. Do you think there's a chance that he actually was calling the plays throughout this game, and then once it showed that it was able to do well, because it seemed like a different offense out there for me that first few drives, and honestly throughout the game, it did not seem like what we've seen from Reich in weeks past. So do we think he had the reins, and then all right, it went pretty well. Let's go public with it.
Um, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case because, like you said, the offense did look very much different. You started to see Visca used a lot more in the ways that we thought the ways that we thought we would see him. You started seeing the play action. Try to do more things to help these receivers that struggle to get it open. You did more to help those guys out throughout the course of the game.
There was no screens.
There were no screens, which seemed to be a staple in the Freddie Wright offense. So again, that's not a crazy idea at all to think that maybe he had a hand in play calling this week and just to get a glimpse of what it could look like. And I think just because of how well it took off in that first half, time to go ahead and make the change, especially over the bye week. Give him a chance to have a long week
Exactly.
to help prepare, help implement some newer things. Because it's gonna be hard to change offensive philosophy smack dab in the middle of a 6 game stretch like how you had to start the year off. So yeah, no, I wouldn't be surprised at all if that were the case.
Yeah, I wouldn't say. Now that you said it, I would say much more from a situational standpoint. I don't know about a full game, but maybe in the first part of the game, letting him get his feet wet, see what it was like. I still think Frank Wright had his pride and ego there. He probably wanted to throw in, some of his nuances that he wanted to show, and of course they fell flat on their face. But I'm interested to see a full game plan implemented by Thomas Brown. I want to see what he brings to the table ultimately throughout the 4 quarters, what he will do to even modify the game as we go through the game, the situations that he's seeing from the defenses, that what they're giving, how he makes those adjustments at halftime, how he comes out in the second half, because we typically come out very, very, very flat in the second half. So we'd really like to see what he looks like coming out of halftime and what that offense looks like in the second half.
Yeah, to touch on that, I think that's still one of my biggest issues, and we can go, dive deep into what we were talking about offensively, defensively. But yeah, JB, like you were saying, I think that's been still one of the bigger issues, and that's going to come from Reich and just in general. I don't think it's even been a Brown or a Navarro issue. It's been just across the board is that lack of adjustment at halftime. We've seen it time and time again, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Especially on the offensive side of the ball, attacking these defenses. These opposing teams, they are getting after us in the second half specifically. I think Christian Wilkins had 2 sacks in that third quarter right off the jump. I mean, we stopped him on that first drive in the second half and then couldn't get anything going really after that up until they scored that final third touchdown, which it is kind of odd that the last 2 weeks we've had both box scores of 42-21, which is odd to me. But that's been a big issue for us, is trying to adapt at halftime.
The next step for this team is being able to protect. Like I mean, like you said, you can. We know how the first 15 plays of a game usually go. Those are your best 15. You reel those off. Okay, now how do you look post that? I mean, in that first half, you look solid enough. Well, really, just the first quarter, if I'm being quite honest.
Yeah.
So it's like to this point. At what point can you trust your left tackle to stay out there on the island and protect? I think until you can figure that out, until you can solve that equation of what's gone wrong with Icky to this point, like he seems. At one point, I wanted to say, "Hey, maybe it's the scheme. Maybe it just doesn't fit him." But I'm like, bro, at this point now, he can't seem to do anything one on one by himself that we trusted him to do last year, towards the end of last year. And I mean, I don't know. It seems like the semblance of not having a power back and not being able to really lean on the run game. We tried leaning on the run game this week, and I thought the run game did perform better, but you still don't have that other back that can truly be that blunt force that you want to have.
Yeah.
I really don't like having to use Chuba in that type of role. I think he's much better as a guy that that comes in and spells you, and he's much more of that slasher. He's a powerful guy, but you definitely don't want him to have to play that bruiser role. And I think until we figure that still has to be figured out. Hopefully Thomas Brown can get everything going in the passing game, a little bit quicker. Obviously, just being able to get the quick game going to possibly alleviate some of that pressure early on. But I don't know that some of these things I don't think we can be remedied by just a coaching change. It's going to be just a roster change right now that we won't be able to make until maybe next season.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with all points made. I think Icky has been the weakest link. We haven't figured out why he regressed so much between last year's offensive scheme to this year's offensive scheme. I agree with Chuba Hubbard. The one thing I do want to see more of, though, is instead of running Chuba between the tackles all the time, let's get him out on those outskirts. Let's get him out there where we put him on the outside, get him on some of those swing patterns. I think he has enough speed to do it. He's a small, compact back that he can fit between the tackles, but if he's going to be one of our main people touching the ball, as many touches as he's gotten, we're going to have to put him on the outside a little bit more. I did like the use of Laviska. I think with his injury, though, it's kind of going to hamper him and getting more time, where I would like to have seen him in some of those fullback sets that we thought about, some of those sets coming around on those end of rounds. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I'm also very, very curious about what is Thomas Brown going to do with Marshall. He hasn't performed up to par. He's had several key drops in key situations that would have given us the yardage to progress the downs forward, getting down the field. So really want to see what is he going to do with Marshall. I think that's going to be a key into the success. I mean, Trimble showed up, which was very, very shocking to me. And then, with Ian Thomas going down, we got that 5 tight end back, that 5 tight end room. What tight end is going to come in? Hayden Hurst has got to come from somewhere. So we got to see what he's going to evolve into as well.
Yeah, I think Tommy Tremble is a big key surrounding Icky as well. Like you said, at a certain point, you can't coddle your left tackle to the point where you have to put somebody next to him. But like you were talking about, JB, throughout that first quarter, specifically when we were doing well in the run game, Tremble was over there on that left side helping Icky out multiple times to give Bryce Young the time to make those key throws that we wanted to see from him, or to give Chuba those tiny holes as they are. That's what's baffling me. You talk about trying to run Chuba out to the left and right a little bit more outside the tackles. We've got guys built in to be lead blockers. Tommy Tremble, Giovanni Bernard.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know the I formation is kind of dead in the NFL now, but like you have that skill set to be able to facilitate that. And if you aren't worried, because if I'm worried about Icky trying to hold a pass block, at this point I'm also still worried about him trying to be able to run block to send Chuba out to that side. So I think that Tommy Tremble can be very vital. I wasn't surprised to see his output. We've seen those flashes since we've drafted him in the small instances where he's actually been used. That was he was one of the ones in that draft class that I was like, all right, that was supposed to be a steal, that we saw his tape in college. He wasn't, it was more of a prototype guy, but we were wanting that kind of guy. So you talk about what we're going to do, with Ian Thomas being out. Again, we can whittle the tight ends down a little bit for me. Hayden Hurst, I still think deserves a role on the team just for what he brings to the table. But as far as tight end goes, I think that Tommy Tremble does need to see a little bit more of the field. And then you're right, JB, I'm wondering how this transition will spread the ball a little bit more, bring TMJ back into the mix, bring Mingo a little bit more into the fold to see if it's spread out a little bit more than just Thielen.
Yeah, absolutely. Tommy Tremble is definitely more athletic than Ian Thomas is by far. And again, like you said, I think he does a lot of things better than Ian Thomas strictly from a blocking perspective. That's what we thought he was coming in to be, to be that, that dual threat type of guy, fullback, H back type of player. I mean, you start to see once he gets the ball in his hands, he is a guy that can start to rumble a little bit. And he seemed to get more confidence as a receiver, so that's a big thing for us moving forward now too. Like you say, if he fulfills this role, you can definitely go to those two tight end sets. Like I said, Giovanni Ricci. Do you want to get him involved? Do you want to throw him in the backfield? Let him play that H back role. There are ways to use some of these guys. You kept 5 tight ends on the roster for a reason. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Steven Sullivan's even bad now. So again, figure out how to get some of these guys going. And like you said, I will say I do wonder what the role for Terrace Marshall will be, because to this point right now, it doesn't feel like he's even on the team. If you go 1 week where you have 9 catches, in the next week to not playing a single snap.
That's the most baffling thing to me. Like I can't recall the last time I've seen a guy who you slated to be, you drafted him in the second round. He had some injuries. Yeah, you're trying to make him a part of this new offense, and he doesn't see a single offensive snap. It's one thing to not, start the game. It's one thing to not have a reception in a game. But to not see the field whatsoever in any capacity is mind-boggling, especially for this offense they were trying to perpetrate. Now, I think that, for me, also, we talk about, what we did like from the offense. What we did see, you talked about, Chuba, and you talked about how we need a little bit more of that push. Again, every week, and again, I'm so smart, I'm saying this incredibly facetiously. Please don't think I actually believe this in myself. But I've been saying from the get-go, I've been on the fence about Miles Sanders since the preseason. My confidence in him went down every time I went out there and watched him, whether it was just from a lack of effort, just a lack of consistency, or just a lack of output. And for me right now, I'm cool. I'm cool off him. Yeah. We like Chuba and Blackshear are clearly, doing what they need to do and filling the role that he was supposed to play.
Right.
And to allow for us to bring in a bruiser to then complement him. He's not playing that role. Yeah. He's not being a bruiser to compliment. So that's money that we're wasting at this moment.
Yeah,
I would say too with that too. I would say, the more you talked about it, Jack, and the more I started looking at it, I don't even know if Miles is 100% healed.
Oh,
right?
I don't think
he came to us. I think he's coming in right around 60% of who he could truly be in this offense. I think that's hampered him enough for us to be cooled off of him, to your point, to say, you know what, maybe he's not a fit. I do want to give him the benefit of the doubt in that, A, he doesn't have the line in Carolina that he had in Philly, and B, he's not 100%. But to say that is to also say as well, in that this new regime of Thomas Brown calling the plays, if you look at the way the Rams used to play when he was over there, it was really wide receiver centric.
It was.
Right? Everything ran through the wide receiver, which opened up the run game. So Chuba, even though he's going to get those touches, if we can get Mingo and Thielen and TMJ, get these guys really rolling, and then you're implementing a couple of tight ends in there, Chuba's going to be able to help out in a way where if Miles Sanders comes back, he can come back in that role to kind of complement what Blackshear and what Chuba are doing. So to our initial point back in the preseason, running back by committee is going to be the best solution for Bryce.
I agree, because there's a reason why you see, it's always the ongoing argument with running backs whenever they're asking for more money. Well, look at the Super Bowl teams, look at the winners, and look at what who their running backs were. There's a reason the Rams haven't had a dominant rushing attack since Todd Gurley. There's a reason why. It's because the offense now in place doesn't facilitate that. Right. There's a reason why the Chiefs are winning Super Bowls with Clyde Edwards-Helaire barely playing, Isaiah Pacheco. Even before that, guys like I'm trying to think of some of the other guys that they had, that were winning those Super Bowl teams. Even the 49ers in their runs, their famous 4 horsemen running attack when they went to the Super Bowl their first time around. Now, obviously, they've changed that perspective a little bit. But, and even like Miles Sanders was used as one of those quotes or as one of those examples for the Eagles even last year. Yeah. Like, this was the running back they were going with, this what he was getting paid. So I think that Chuba and Blackshear could be the perfect kind of running backs to fill into this new wave of the NFL that isn't as running back, centered.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought seeing Raheem Blackshear back out there was a good sign. I could say it
was aggravating, honestly.
It was aggravating because you look at how he ended the year last year. Him and Chuba both. There's a thing about, it's always thinking the grass is going to be greener when you go out and sign some of these guys, and thinking that Miles Sanders was going to come in and be this key piece. But to that point in his career, he had never been the feature back.
No.
He had never been a true number one. He never had 1,000 yards prior to last year. So again, and then not equally divvying out the shares of touches. That's another problem for me as well. And also wasting a guy like Blackshear who contributed for you last year. I think that's one of those things where I'm like, I can't get behind that. I can't get behind watching guys be successful.
Yeah.
And then you can't seem to find a role for them. So
I mean, I understood like initially what the mindset was, because we saw last year that if we didn't run 40 times a game, we weren't winning that game, and that's because guys like Chuba and Blackshear, they needed to get those like 10 to 12 like 3 to 4 yard runs to break out one of their classic 30, 40, 50 yard up the middle wide open runs. Same with Foreman, he needed to get his 20 bruising carries a game. So I understood the idea where like you could bring Miles Sanders in, and we're not bringing him in for like. I think that's what is upsetting, is that if we really break it down, Miles Sanders was not brought in to be a running back. Like, he was brought in to obviously play that role, but he was not to be in between the tackles. He was brought in for those swing passes, those those wheel routes. He was brought in for those kind of the variability of it all, and then he can't even do that. Like, we always talked about him not being a dominant runner, but to be a safety valve in a McCaffrey-esque way for Bryce Young. And that was all. I mean, he's trying to go out there. And to your point, JB, I don't think he's 100% healthy, because he's catching the ball and then falling down untouched the minute he gets the ball. And we saw that not once or twice, but 3 or 4 freaking times from him.
Yeah.
And I think that's what gets, that's another reason why I said it's lost its luster.
Yeah, for me, I think too, you see it in his lack of burst, right? And that's what we talked about the last episode. In that, if you see Chuba get the ball, it's that burst straight through the hole. It's how he's manifesting those runs, pushing it straight through the offensive line into the second tier, into the defensive side of the ball. And it's with me, Miles seems very, very, very tippy-toe-ish. It almost seems like he can't seem to plant and get a full head of steam to get through there to get those yardages. So, I mean, again, I'm happy with where we are as far as what we've seen. I'm truly excited to kind of get a kind of new breath of fresh air coming out of the bye week. We got a big tall task coming in, the number 2 pick, the one that everybody thinks we should have picked coming into the house, coming into the bank. It's going to be a very, very high level, high visibility game, in that the 1 and the 2 up going up against each other. Thomas Brown's calling his first game. Do we see a difference? What does the offense look like? And also, what does that run defense look like coming out of that, right? So there's got to be some things that are going to change from that perspective, because Mostert looked like he was going to be a Hall of Fame running back against us, which we've said all year that's been a huge, huge issue in giving up those big plays. We haven't figured that part out. I don't know what Evero's going to do. We are really, really down on the defensive side of the ball. Luvu was hurt. Dante was hurt. I mean, we can go on and on and on. Woods is hurt. So we're really damaged on that side of the ball. It's going to be really, really interesting to see how Evero's going to be able to hold them back, especially with the way Tank Dell's been these first 6 weeks. I mean, he's really put his name out there. CJ Stroud's looking like he was the man we should have drafted. So how do we kind of curtail those attitudes and really, really come out and give our best foot forward? And hopefully we get our first win at the bank in front of our crowd.
At this point, I just want to win in general. But it's interesting you talk about, Thomas Brown, and I think we all talked about, how rough these first 6 games were going to be. And I think, there's even some people saying on Twitter, like, Frank Reich wanted to give Brown the reins earlier, but also didn't want to throw him in this situation where he's going to get, like, again, like we talked about, in a blood match against the Dolphins, where if he actually didn't have the play calling rights, like we were speculating, that's a tough testament to go. So instead, you go give him an extra week and a half, put him up against the Texans in a game that is really going to be like you said, JB, talking about all of just the outside noise surrounding it, with who we passed for, who we passed up, but not only in C.J. Stroud, but also Tank Dell, because if you look back at the numbers, he was still on the board when Jonathan Mingo was taken. So that's not even like, not only did we not take Stroud, we didn't take Tank Dell either, and that was another big thing. So I think that it's going to be a big week for Thomas Brown, and I'm wondering, interesting what y'all are thinking, what impact are we going to see, and how quickly do you think we're going to see this impact?
I think you'll see it how to play design. I think we saw it this past weekend, how the play designs definitely differ between what we've seen like the previous 5 weeks. Being able to get your guys out in space. How will you work those guys in? I mean, now missing LaVisca will be huge moving forward, because I thought a lot of what he was trying to implement played into the hands of what LaVisca did well. So him being out with a high ankle sprain will definitely hurt. But crazy enough, call me crazy, but I think Smith Marset starts to see more touches in
God,
this
I hope
offense
so.
now. But just because of the semblance of speed that he does
Yeah.
have, I think you got to start to see him hit the field a bit more. And I think you see Mingo start to take that next step as well. I feel like I'm starting to see him be more involved in the offense the past couple of weeks. Definitely a guy I want to see what he can do after the catch. Is going. I think you're going to see your younger guys start to take shape and take form in this Thomas Brown offense, and it's important for him. He was the guy that banged the table for Bryce to be the number one overall pick, and so prove yourself right in this game. That's the biggest thing. Mingo as well. That's another guy that you took. Prove you don't have to, because everything can hinge upon winning this game, but you want to prove that you made the right choices to the guys that you definitely passed on, that are right now flying high and having a great season.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm more interested in the defense. I want to see how we can come out and really start putting some hats on this run game. And it's definitely the weakest part of our defense. We've got, again, I don't understand a lot of the reasons of why we're not being able to plug the hole. It seems week after week we kind of teeter on getting better, but we always fall off that second quarter through the second half of the game. And I don't know whether it's us being tired of being on the field, whether we're tired of getting pounded on, or if the offensive side of the ball on the other team has figured out what we can't do. And then he just say, you know what, we're going to run it until you stop it. So I'm really interested on that side of the ball. From Thomas Brown, I want to see the innovation, bar none. However he puts it out on the field, I want to see innovation. I want to see the reason why we call him one of the brightest minds within that offensive room that we've got right now. I want to see him bring some of those dynamic sort of schemes that we've been yearning for. Now, true, the personnel may not call for it, but use the personnel we've got and at least show us some sparks of it, because up until this point, we haven't seen much at all.
Yeah, I agree with you on that point. I think just touch on the offense though for Thomas Brown. I think that you talk about bringing in that ingenuity, bringing in that variability, bringing in that new age kind of offense. Shantice and I were at Dilworth on Sunday talking about this though. Like the receivers we got in place on our team, they're not the new age type of wide receiver, and that's really what is upsetting. Is that you talk about, especially with LaVisca going out, like that's your guy to be ingenuitive with, and to be and to be trying to new age with. Like you're not gonna run any double reverses from Mingo to Chark. Like it's not gonna work. And if you had still had Shi Smith on the team, that you might be able to do it. I mean, and you talk about Ishith, I can never say his name, Smith Marset. Bringing that speed, that could be somewhere where you try to bring that in. But that's the big problem, is that we brought in these guys. They're not like your AJ Browns. They're not your DK Metcalfs. They're bigger, but they're nowhere near as fast as they are.
Right.
And but they're also not nearly as big as they are. And then you got, Thielen clearly shows that he's able to play in a much more dynamic role than he had in Minnesota. But he's not a Cooper Kupp. He's not. I mean, he's not, and that's that he's not in that echelon of that type of wide receiver. So you're not going to get that out of him. For some reason, Derek Wright still has a job. I don't know why that was something that still has happened, but so that's, I think, what's going to be concerning. I want to see what Thomas Brown can do with the offense we have in place, because I think that it's he not was spoiled in LA by any means. I mean, he definitely had a different kind of skill set in LA when the time frame he was there, and then he, of course, wasn't calling plays in that regard either. But I think that it's going to just be interesting to see what he can do right now. You talk defensively. I think it's just been a matter of, we've just had like they said, this 6-week stretch was brutal for many reasons. Outside of the Saints game, if Kamara was in that game, you're playing 6 of the most prominent running attacks in the NFL, both from this year to last year. Transition, what have you. You knew what you were going to get from Bijan Robinson. You knew what you were going to get from the Lions. Even Madison is able to still perform well. You knew what you were going to get last week, especially, you might not have known going into the season, but you damn well knew, after the Broncos game, what you were going to go up against. And then even, looking at the Seahawks game, you knew it was going to be somebody. Kenneth Walker was more than likely going to make you pay. So I think that's just been the issue when it comes to our rushing attack. I mean, we have had issues with that all the while. And of course, like you talked about a few weeks back, just the lack of output from, Deshaun Williams and from Shy Tuttle has really played a part in that. And I think, honestly, and I hate to say it because I think it's what we needed to bring at this moment in time, but injuries just drained it. I think it's the scheme. I really don't think the scheme plays well. I mean, it's not built to play well in a plug the run stopping defense.
Well, not when you let your biggest nose tackle walk out the door.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, we just don't have the horses for this right now. I think what he's trying to do definitely works. We've seen that Evero's defenses, they work. You look at how bad
Just get gassed.
You just get gassed. You just don't have the players to run it right now.
No.
Like you said, not having the J.C. Horn back there in the back end changes a lot. I mean, it's night and day how this secondary looks when he is and when he isn't on the field, and not being able to take away anybody's number one or even number two receiver is a problem. You start looking at the guys that played alongside Brian Burns and Derrick Brown. I would say a lot of the reason why you feel like you haven't seen Brian Burns pop. Well, who's on the other side of Brian Burns that applies any pressure? They got Justin Houston to this point. We were expecting a lot of Justin Houston to come in.
Yeah, we were. I mean,
we expected a bit much. We were hoping, right? But we got no production from any of the other guys. I mean, Yatur has his plays here and there, but Yatur is not a pass rusher.
No, he's not.
He makes his plays in the ground game, and he has his impact here and there, but he's not a solidified rusher enough to the point where it takes pressure off of Brian Burns. Nobody in the interior has helped Derrick Brown out at all.
Not at all.
Derrick Brown has still played well, but you know how much harder it is to play well when nobody else can eat up any space.
He does. He's been doing it his entire time here. I mean,
right.
We've been looking for his compliment the entire time he's been here. I think it's what you talk about. You hit the nail on the head. Like, this scheme works well in run defense when you are able to trust and rely on your defensive backs. If you're having to pull these guys that are on your edges back into coverage because you don't have the cats to be able to cover, then that's where your run defense goes. You can't send 4 guys. You can't send 5 guys on a blitz or to attack the run because you got to drop them back in coverage, which is not what we wanted from them. That's why we're having these issues. And then not even the guys we want to be in coverage. Houston, we were like, all right, he had those picks, but it wasn't because he was in coverage. It's because somebody else was in coverage and he could be a spy or fly under the radar. He's not able to do that when he's in that starting prominent role. So we said, Fitterer, like, the pickups he made, especially on defense and in offense, a lot of the time, I'll say that point again, they're good pickups to be backups, to be fill-ins. The problem is that either he does them to put them into a starting role, or he does that and then the guys that are ahead of them get injured and then they're having to play in. And you obviously want your backups to be able to play a starting role, but, I mean, there's a reason why they're backups.
Right.
And so I think, JB, to your point...
I said it. Yeah. I said it, I think we underestimated Shaq's presence.
Oh yeah.
In the middle. I think for me, I definitely underestimated it. I think with him going out, Luvu being injured, YGM now kind of teetering on the injury bug, JC Horn yet again being out. I mean, you talk right there, and then Jeremy Chin, the non-existent guy, who we really had high expectations for. That's been a disappointment, and it's been an utter failure in how we've used him. And I think we've used him incorrectly, and I don't think he has the confidence that I know he can play and the skill level I know he can play with. I just think his confidence is gone. So, I agree with Shantice 100% in that I don't think the horses that we have in the stable fit what we're trying to do, strictly based on the fact is we don't have the depth. We don't have the people who we thought were going to be there to kind of offset some of these pickups that Fitterer has had. I'm more frustrated with Fitterer in that he's consistently looking for all these positions, but I have yet to see him talk about an offensive lineman. Now, everybody else in the nation can see why we're having these issues on the offensive side of the ball, but everything else is about we need a receiver. We need a receiver, but guess what? If we had a line, some of these receivers we got would have receptions for positive yards instead of Bryce trying to throw from his back. So there's that offset that I think, for me, we talk about Reich, and I've said it before, Fitterer has to be held accountable as well to me in that he should be doing more as far as in my mind, ensuring up that offensive line. And I'm tired of hearing about the reports of Brian Burns is up for trade, Dante Jackson's up for trade, Jeremy Chin is up for trade. So you're trying to trade away the other half of the defense. What do you think you're going to get for that?
Well, and
what do you think you're going to give it as?
Well, and that's going to be the interesting thing because, Fitterer is on the hot seat more than anybody, and it's going to be an interesting kind of, battle of philosophies. You talked about like not having the cats on defense. Well, now there are Dante, Chin, are all on the trade. Marshall are on the trade block. So are you trying to win now, like you've been saying you have for the whole time, or are you trying to then just get pieces to try to correct your mistakes and try to because the biggest thing is going to be trying to get back into the draft, and you're going to have to trade if you want to get a first rounder. You're not going to get a first rounder straight up for Chin, for Dante, or for TMJ. Right. It's just not going to happen. You're not if you trade now, 2 out of 3 of them in a package, or them and something, and what we're all hoping doesn't happen with Burns for something in a first. You're going to go back on everything you've been saying as a GM about this win now mentality. We have the horses to do, to make this race happen right now. We can. Like you said, his infamous quote. We can take the division. We're in a place to take the division right now. You're going to go back on that philosophy by doing that to save your own ass from the mistakes that you have put this team in already. By going like this, you talk about that lineman. Yeah, I mean, you drafted Zavala. That was a good and probably the most sensible draft pick out of all of them. I would say. Obviously, Bryce Young. You can say what you want about. That was going to be a toss-up either way.
Right.
Mingo, I mean, you need a wide receiver. But Zavala, right, like that made sense.
Right. But, I mean, you said this earlier, and I really wanted to piggyback off of it initially when you said it. A lot of the signings he's made have been backup signings. And a lot of the draft picks he's made haven't been guys that can even stick in this league.
No.
Like, none of the guys, like, go through all of the list of guys that got released that were Scott Fitterer draft picks. These guys are either on practice squads right now or they're not in the league. I mean, right now, I think like Keith Taylor is with the Chiefs, Shies with the Titans now. Brandon Smith got picked up by the Eagles, but they're all on practice squads right now.
Yeah.
So you haven't even picked up quality NFL guys that can come in, they can come fill in and be starters for you right now to this point. So there's no trust that I have in him to make me think that if he goes and gets more draft picks, he can get it right this time. The free agent signings have been bad. I mean, not only that, you went out and paid a running back top end money, haven't got any production out of him.
No.
You know what I'm saying? So I think to this point, there's nothing that can save Scott's job.
Now to his defense, he didn't know that was going to be the highest. I don't think he thought in any way that was going to be the highest deal a running back was going to get.
Fair enough.
With the guys on the market.
I will say the market, he set the market. That's the crazy part.
It didn't ever say, hey, this is what you should be paying. There was no indicator or no precedent that this is what you need to pay him.
And look, hindsight being 2020, yeah, we say, oh, you shouldn't have gave that money to Miles Sanders. But I get why he did it coming off the year he had. You like, okay, let's go. We have a chance to go get a guy like that. Then yeah, you do it. But he's missed in every step of the way. He's hit on guys like the Frankie Louvu's and guys of that nature, but which those guys were special teamers.
Yeah.
In their previous situations, you just so happen to get lucky. And those guys turn around to work out.
I mean, we said it time and time again. Even then when he does hit on a guy, because who would have been really great in this 3-4 set? Yeah. Hassan Reddick would have been just so lovely in this set, and he hit on that, and then decided it was too expensive to follow through on your good idea. Same with Gilmore, and you can say what you want about it in that situation. He didn't want to stay with that regime, what have you. But his defense for not getting Gilmore the money was that the money had to go somewhere else, and you give it to the guy that you drafted, in the second round off of his first year. And now then you turn around and put him on the trade block, not 2 years removed from making that acquisition. So it's just this constant you're going to have to make moves and try to backtrack. You don't want to double down, but it's just showing without saying I didn't make the right call. I'm having to make the right call. So JB, you talked about the Texans game's not end of the world. If I'm Tepper right now, off of from the tension and the conversation that we're hearing about, the meetings that are happening, the guy whose job is on the line and the guy who is going to benefit most from a win against Houston is Scott Fitterer. To validate, anything, to validate his decision to take Bryce Young, or Tepper's decision, whoever's decision, because I don't rightly believe that it was just David Tepper who wanted Bryce Young. Jerry Jones is the only owner in the NFL that would say, this is who I want, and then that's who they're going to take. I don't believe that for a second. But either way, you still made that decision. And then same with Jonathan Mingo, like you talked about for Thomas Brown. Thomas Brown fought for both, Jonathan Mingo and for Bryce Young. which is why, again, like you said, JB, I hope that motivates him to call an even better game to showcase their abilities. But this Texans game, I think, is paramount for Federer.
Yeah, I think the Texas game is paramount not only for Federer, but it's paramount for Bryce. It's paramount for a lot of things. I think it's paramount for our organization in its totality. It's a telltale sign of where Tepper's driving the ship. It's a telltale sign of, is it over for Federer, to your point? It's also a telltale sign of, where are we measuring the Carolina Panthers going forward? Because right now, we're at the bottom of the barrel. We haven't been this bad since 1998. It is a telltale sign also of, we are the highest scoring team in our division, but we haven't won a single freaking game. So what does that mean overall? And I think it's an indictment on everything Shantice just said and everything you just said. It's about how we've drafted. It's about the free agents we've signed. It's about how we've tried to bring this band of misfits together. And I mean, you guys know in our text chats, I am the first one to jump off to jump off the cliff and really go all in. And I really had to take a step back today when we got the notification about Thomas Brown. But this game against the Texans is huge. It's huge on so many levels, in that D'Amico Ryans was going to interview with us. We were supposed to take CJ Stroud. He was an option. Everybody thought we were going to go for Tank Dell. We didn't take Tank Dell. So again, it's this 1 versus 2 mentality. And right now, the ones that pick second in this bill, they're way better off than we are coming into this game. And you better believe they're motivated to come kick our butts. So if we're not coming to play, if we're not coming with innovative plays, if the defense isn't ready to plug this hole, it's not only going to be a long Sunday, but Tepper may be having Monday morning meetings, not at the coffee shop, but at the unemployment line for a couple of people.
No, I agree. And I think you said, it's kind of scary. There's all that Texans Twitter beef preseason. It's been really quiet for a while, and they've had every opportunity to be like, oh, there's CJ Stroud doing so much better. And I can only imagine how bad it would be, though, if they come in and rout us, how bad the Twitter presence would be later that day.
What's the game? That game's at home on the road.
Yep, at home.
You can't lose.
Yeah, it's retirement day.
Yeah, it's the Hall of Fame game.
Yeah, it's a Hall of Fame game.
You also can't lose your Hall of Honor game. That
Pep and Moose getting inducted.
Yep.
You can't. I'm be honest. Can't lose that one, bro.
Yeah.
Cannot front.
It would be really just disappointing, and just really, I mean, I don't think, for me in that matchup, Bryce doesn't have to prove anything to me. Just continue to play the way he's been playing. I think he's throughout all these variables, I think that I'm not, and I don't like it when there are certain fans that say that we're because that's been a big thing, is that the fans are coddling Bryce. He's your rookie quarterback, and don't you want to give your rookie quarterback the benefit of the doubt?
Right. I mean, not only that, what did you expect? That's
what I'm saying.
I think the last rookie season we saw, I think, warped so many people's minds and how this is supposed to go, how it usually goes for a lot of guys. Whereas that, bro, this is it's still a learning year. They still have to learn. And I mean, in these things, the learning process for some takes longer than others. I think I've seen Bryce continues to get better week by week. So I'm not truly worried about anything that I've seen to this point. A lot of the issues that we're having aren't because of Bryce. I mean, a lot of issues, we talked about the issues earlier in the episode. It's because you're starting left tackle, your number 6 overall pick right now can't seem to hold his own out there. So, I mean, I think if a lot of things were better around him, had a lot of things been better as far as the front office and who they're deciding to grab in free agency, things would look different. But right now, I've seen nothing from Bryce that makes me worry. There are things that he's just gonna have to work through as a rookie that just gonna take time.
And taking the time and taking enjoyment out of his detrimental play and trying to say that CJ Stroud is doing so much better, that doesn't make your ticket cost any less. It doesn't make us win ball games. It doesn't make him play better. It doesn't make CJ Stroud play worse. It just makes you look bitter. It makes you look bitter and you're hoping that this guy was going to come and fail. And it's, if you wanted CJ Stroud, cool. That's whatever. I mean, that's your own prerogative. But then this is the guy you've gotten. And if you're going to spend money on jerseys, you shouldn't continue to prop up these. Well, this is what CJ Stroud's doing. He's not throwing any. He has less weapons, or he has a different system. It's a different situation. And it's not like they're undefeated. It's not like he's the number one quarterback in the NFL right now. Like, he has his issues. They've lost games because of his issues and because of the team's issues. Like, yes, they've obviously won a game, but if your metric is that, like, that low that you're trying to drown him because you haven't won a game, and you're looking at this 6 weeks and not understanding why we've lost 6 games, like, I did not expect it to be this bad.
Not any.
At all. I don't think there's any Panthers fan that looked at this schedule and said it was going to be 0-6. But looking at these teams, it's not far off the course to say, yeah, you could lose every one of these games. If you have 2 divisional rivals that, yes, are in different situations than JB, like you said, we're the highest scoring team in the division, that does hurt. But they're still division rivals, and I don't care what you say. Philadelphia could lose to New York next week, and I would not be surprised.
Right.
Because it's a divisional matchup, and those carry different weights to them. And then outside of that, it's the Dolphins, the Seahawks, the Lions, and the Vikings. Like, those aren't gimme games. We said going into this year, I said it going into this year, and you all said it as well, every one of these games was a toss-up.
Right.
Every single one. The only one I think that we all thought legitimately was going to be a loss no matter what was ironically the Cowboys game, which now looking at it, that's a toss-up game again. I think still.
Okay.
I still think it is. I mean, after the way they played against the Dolphins, like, and the way they played against.
Well, Jack, let me interrupt you, buddy. I don't know if Bryce has had his head on a swivel the way he's going to need to have his head on a swivel for Micah Parsons. All the flack that Micah has taken, all the flack that he's taken on Micah, Micah has taken over the last couple of weeks. He's got something to prove. I mean, I want to talk through something that you were kind of teetering on there, and I want to buy in with you. This game coming up against the Texans is for the haters to have an "I told you so" game.
It is.
That's all it is. End of the day, it's an "I told you so" game. So, in order for it not to turn into that, to Shantice's point, and I agree with Shantice, and I was going to say that before he did, in that I've seen improvement week over week with Bryce. The first 2 weeks were shaky. But since then, you can see he's getting more settled. He's getting more comfortable. He's getting more confident, which is why I'm excited to see what Thomas Brown does with him. And I'm more inclined to think Bryce is going to be a lot more comfortable in the offense that's going to be designed for him for this game.
I agree.
I'm not saying for the rest of the season, for this game. So I think that that's going to be the difference maker. The other side of that is we as a defensive side, right? We got to come in and show out, and we've got to play to the strength that we know we can, and we're going to have to plug up some of these holes. I don't know how we're going to do it because for the life of me, the manpower we have on that side of the ball is a hodgepodge of players.
It's gross.
But I can't even tell you who's who. So that's all I wanted to add is this game is strictly for the haters. It's an "I told you so" game. We just gotta quiet it.
And I'll tell you right now though, and it's not gonna make anybody happy, either the haters or the fans. Their stat lines and CJ Stroud and Bryce Young, do not be surprised if they are like neck and neck. Their QBRs, I do not expect them to be any sort of space in between the two of them. I think there's going to be, I'm banking each of them, I could say 3 touchdown, 1 pick games for the both of them. Right. 200, 180 yard passing games for the both of them. And it's going to, like this game, unfortunately, as much as people, the haters, the fans want it to be decided by the guys under the center, I don't think that's going to be the deciding factor. It's just not going to be. I think it's going to have much more to do with the coaching philosophies, which is why I think it's a great week to bring Thomas Brown in, because I don't like the matchup between DeMeco Ryans and Frank Reich in coaching philosophies. I really don't, and we've talked about it for a while. But you hit on a point there, JB, and talking about how impactful it could be to have an offense that's going to be built for Bryce. I think something that's kind of fallen on the radar, and we've seen the writing on the wall in Indianapolis. There's a reason why in his tenure, instead of going and getting a younger guy, he continued to feed in Phillip Rivers, Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz, all these exact same quarterbacks to just play into the system that he had built, not someone to, be dynamic with. Mm-hmm. I think if Anthony Richardson is on his team right now, if Anthony Richardson's on this team, or if Frank Reich's still with the Colts, these same woes are going to be continuing. Anthony Richardson is not going to be playing. He's not going to look like the next Cam Newton. He's going to look like the next, Josh Allen trying to be back there in the pocket. So I think it'll be very interesting to see how Thomas Brown how quickly he can cultivate an offense for Bryce. And like you said, JB, how much more comfortable Bryce could look this week.
Right, because that's been the biggest thing. I think everybody's felt that Bryce hadn't seemed confident, and it seemed like he was very, very much frustrated with how things were going. And to your point earlier about Thomas Brown possibly having a hand in what happened early in Miami this past weekend, yeah, I can attest to that because I did not see the level of frustration or the level of uneasiness in Bryce and how he played. He played confident, played sure of himself. You look at the touchdown pass he threw to Thielen, dotted.
It was, and thank God it was a dot, because if not, it was an interception going the other direction.
Oh, absolutely. But he seems to be throwing the ball with much more confidence and much more moxie, much more like a guy that was the number one pick. He seems like he's carrying himself in that type of manner. And the closer we can get him back to playing like that, the better. Thomas Brown seems to have a plan that he wants to implement for Bryce. Seems to have always had that plan from the day he drafted him. I think you'll definitely see more. We'll see more of it. It's just to this point we just don't know what that'll be.
Yeah.
We still truly don't know what he'll try to implement. I think the best thing we could probably do is go back and look at some preseason games and the halves that he did call and start to see maybe what are some things that we could possibly pick up on that he'll probably try to implement this upcoming week.
I'll be interested to see how the play calling, like in literal calling the plays, changes, because we saw, obviously last week the wristband came out because as JB mentioned, I think you mentioned last week or so, the difference in taking an Alabama offense where you're getting cue cards and signals is much different than getting a whole slew of, I think it was you that said actually, was a whole slew of phrases coming at you from your headset. So I think maybe you even see a philosophy in that change, not where they're having their whole playbook adapted to be, on cue cards or something like that, but they're clearly trying to make strides with the wristband. They're clearly trying to, simplify it, or at least change it in a way that's a little bit more easier to understand for him. So I think that might be one of your biggest changes, and that could honestly make a world of difference if he's not sitting there, getting it. I think another thing will be audibles. Changing the play at the line of scrimmage. We have yet to see that from this offense in a way that's been impactful. And I think it's because, like we talk about, Reich sending them out there with one, maybe two plays, and if anything, hot routes to change to. He's, been infamous in saying, the route was supposed to only go to Adam Thielen, or the play was only supposed to go to this receiver. I don't think you're going to get any of that. I pray. Like you said, lack of screens that we saw this week. That's why I thought about it, because I was like, they've not called a single screen. They haven't done one. It's been insane. The tight ends are actually getting plays past the line of scrimmage, the wide receivers, but that's why I think it might have switched back and forth, because there were still some questionable plays. That 4th and 1, a crucial 4th and 1, and I don't understand. I understand debating and trying to say, okay, they think we're gonna just go for the goal, the line of scrimmage, so let's try to sneak one past him. And albeit, Hurst, although again, then I don't have my tight end run that route and try to make that gap in the distance. And albeit he might have had about a foot and a half ahead of him. But Bryce Young knows he has to put everything under that ball, and we've seen him overthrow receivers constantly. So that's where I'm like, all right, you made smart plays, and then you call a deep out route on a 4th and 1 in a crucial point in the game when you were only down a touchdown at that point. So there was some of those instances where I was like, why did you just call that play right then and there? Right. Or not calling any timeouts in the last minute and a half of the game when you could have set yourself in much better field position. You had the ball with, I think a minute 15 left and all 3 of your timeouts, and they didn't call a single timeout until 20 seconds left in the half. That was that was baffling to me.
You're hitting on something there. No, you're hitting on something there, because that's another thing I was getting ready to bring up is I hope to see better clock management. Coming out of the bye week. I hope Thomas Brown has a mentality around that piece, because that does dig into Bryce's confidence as well, right? If you're going in, you're giving me the plays, I'm trying to get the offense ready to roll, and we're constantly either having arguments or indecisiveness over what the play is going to be. And every time I get up to the line, by the time he gets a chance to analyze the line, I'm at 5 seconds. So hopefully Thomas Brown, they can work on that in this bye week, the clock management piece, because I think that puts way unneeded pressure, not only on Bryce, but also on the offensive line, especially with the way that they're playing right now. You got to be able to give them enough time to get up to the line, get set, and hopefully the discipline of not jumping off sides, or being that the clock is not running down and we're trying to rush a play and they jump off sides in those critical moments. Definitely. And then to piggyback on your last comment, That's exactly why I thought it was situational, right? When you're talking about Thomas Brown calling plays last week, because you still saw some of those Frank snafus, uh, your 4th and 1. You know what I mean? That sort of thing. We just can't keep shooting ourselves in the foot. So when we have the opportunity to take the lead, tie the game, put the game in our momentum instead of us playing from behind. So those are things I think that my fingers are crossed, my toes are crossed. The Thomas Brown is going to change.
Yeah, and I think that hopefully, if it was Matt Rule, I'd be a little bit more concerned. He might try to in the game in the moment go, let me call this play. You're fine. Let me call this one. There is a part of me that's a little worried that if things get kind of sticky in the game, Wright might try to take the reins back. I don't think that is very likely, but there is a small part of me that is a little worried because of how traumatized I've been by Matt Rule.
Yeah, I don't think so, man. I think once he's off of the play calling, he's off of it for the remainder of the year. Again, I mean, at least from what he said, he's going to let Thomas Brown do this with no type of shadow hanging over his head or anything like that. And I trust him to do that. I very much trust him to allow Thomas Brown to be able to fully implement what he wants to put into this offense. So yeah, I'm not too worried about Frank.
It just shows you how hurt how just traumatized. For me, if Matt Rule said this for like Joe Brady, like if he wasn't calling the plays, I'd be like, it's really just Matt Rule calling the plays, and he just said Joe Brady's calling the plays. Like he's not really, or when his buddy Perry was in there, when he was taking the reins, like that's not him calling the play. That's Matt Rule calling the plays, and just with a wig on. Like there's no way. But I don't think that's the case now. I think hopefully, this bye week is big to give that time to implement, to get, maybe, these guys that are on the fence that have been bouncing around, the injury report can take that break to be healthy. Like that can be really big to go into this game. And then, the next half of the season, I mean, they're still not easy games, but you can breathe a little bit more when you have to face, a Richardson-less Colts, who God knows who's going to be starting for the Titans. Some of these teams that aren't. It's not the juggernauts we were seeing in the front half of the schedule. It's still not easy by any means. I mean, the Bears are still question marks, but there's a lot of teams with a lot less certainty. We've faced some very certain teams that knew what they were doing, knew who they were. Now you've got a lot of question mark teams you're going up against in the Bears and the Colts and the Titans. These teams and the Texans that don't have it as much together, and that can allow for you to then slip through the cracks and get some wins. Now that, unless something happens, really only serves you to just be able to knock that Bears pick down a couple picks.
That's what we're playing for at this point.
I mean, it's really what the season's about, is making sure that pick is as bad as possible for them.
Yeah, that's the only thing we could be playing for. Like 4 or 5 wins would be a success at this point.
Get them out of the top 10. Try to
possibly.
Possibly.
I doubt it.
I doubt it too. I really do. Especially.
I doubt it.
I'm hoping
they're going to end up with Marvin Harrison Jr.
They're going to end up with Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. But it's okay because I'm calling you out, Bears fans. Y'all still go y'all still win 3 games with the 2 of them in the helm, and you'll be calling for Tyson Badger to take over Caleb Williams' spot too. So I'm ready for it to happen. I hope that's what we see when we go up to Chicago. Actually, I hope we see Fields because again, it's another hater game, another Twitter game. There's a lot of Twitter games we got coming up, so I think that is what makes this at least a little bit more interesting to watch. They're not as abysmal, like, oh, this game's just gonna suck. At least we have some.
There's some type of there's
that motivation,
on the line, or you at least to be able to talk trash to some of these guys, bro. But
that's really all we can for at this point. And then just that hope to see that I hope Brown does well, not well enough to where he gets poached. Now there's the one question, and I think and JB put it in the chat, and I think it's a bit premature. Is there a point where if Brown does well enough, do you consider giving the promotion to him? Personally, I don't say so because I've always been against having a head coach call an aspect of the game. I'm okay with a philosophy, but I've never liked that metric. So I think if Brown does well enough to stay around, you do what you can to keep him in the building and hope he doesn't get poached by somebody else. But I don't think you fire Wright to give him the job.
It would be a bit premature to try to give Thomas Brown a head coaching gig because I really wouldn't know. These would be his first games calling plays in the NFL.
I mean, it was a bit premature to give him an offensive coordinating gig.
Right. I mean, he's kind of, I won't say he's jumped the ranks. He's definitely paid his dues, but there's a bit more he's got to learn before I want to make him the head guy. And like you said, I never was a fan of a head coach calling any side of the ball.
Yeah.
Like you said, philosophies for sure, but calling it I don't necessarily like. like you said, the best hope you will have is try to see if you can keep him in the building if he has success, in hopes that maybe that next year things still if they're on the upswing, maybe you consider it.
Yeah.
But right now, no, that'd be very premature.
I know you like to play devil's advocate, JB. So give me the reasoning behind the thought process.
My only thing is, if he wins the locker room, what choice do you have?
Oh well,
the last person that won. Well, hold on. The last person that won the locker room, you fired, right? The last person that won the locker room, you let him walk. You see where that's gotten us, right? So if you got players coming to your office saying, "Hey, look, we want to play for TB. We appreciate Frank what he's been able to do. Maybe he can be the new Jim Caldwell and Capers, the non-existent consultant."
Yeah, I don't know what they're
right
doing on the
team. And then we can just have TB. That's the only thing I'm thinking of when I said that is, if Thomas Brown gets in there, let's just say we come off the bye week, we win against the Texans. And I don't have the schedule in front of me. I can't remember if we have the Bears or the Cowboys after that.
It's the Colts after
the Cowboys.
I think it's the Colts.
It's the Colts.
After the Texans.
So let's say we win the Texans, we win the Colts, and now the team's starting to rally around Thomas Brown, and we get momentum, and we look more competitive in these games. We look more cohesive in these games. We start going towards the back half of the year, and we really running it up. Like, I'm not, to Shantice's point, we're getting to about 5 wins. The locker room is happy, and they're going to the office and they're saying this. What do you do? In my mind, you want to fill that stadium up, right? Because you got a lot of blue seats sitting up there.
Mm-hmm.
So, Tepper, if you're trying to fill those seats, give the fans what they want, you might want to listen a little bit to the fans and what the team is saying around that. Because right now you've lost the fandom almost, and you can definitely look at the seats. So that's my only reason.
I agree with you. I just, again, we saw what happened the last time a coach did in the locker room. Clearly, that doesn't weigh a whole lot for Tepper. That's not, that's about as glittery as gold is for him in that metric. So I don't think it would come to that point. But it is interesting to say, I think what happened. I mean, we know, I think Avero. I think honestly the box scores are going to be the only thing that keeps Avero from maybe getting like an outside job somewhere else at this point. If we were to still continue with this losing record, I think that because it outshines kind of how well he does in the front half. Now TB comes out and balls out, and we're winning. We're able to match those 40 points, or get at least closer to it. And it's because of him. Like, I don't think the players are going to rally around him per se, because it's different than Wilkes, where Wilkes was the only guy to rally around. Right. Even if Thomas Brown comes out and performs really well, Reich's the figurehead, and they're going to rally around Reich, which is what's supposed to happen. That head coach is supposed to be that guy, the pastor he's been, the leader, the public speaker. That's what his role is supposed to be. So I hope that would happen. I think that TB would maybe then, he might get poached a bit quicker. If, say Bieniemy gets a job, and a head coaching job finally. Washington's looking for a new offensive coordinator. Ben Johnson, finally jumps ship from Detroit, and there's someone else is looking for an offensive coordinator. He's going to make a lateral move somewhere else. Right. And that's just up to then Tepper to be the money man. You've never, crazily enough, other than your head coach, have never kept, outside of Phil Snow, a coordinator that long. Like, we've gone through offensive coordinators like Defense Against the Dark Arts teachers at Hogwarts. So, like, you're going to have to try to keep one for more than a season. And I think that's where Tepper's going to have to make a stand and say, all right, I want this guy. I want to keep this guy. And he's shown he can be that guy. So let's do what we can to make sure he doesn't leave the building. I think that's what it's going to come down to. But, of course, you got to put the cart before the horse and put the horse before the cart and actually win these games. So if I'm looking at a score prediction for Tuesday, we're going to obviously take our bye week. We need some time to recoup. I've got, a bum knee that I got to get iced. So we got to take a week and a half off. So before we go, my score prediction for the Texans game, I'm going to go, I'm going to say 24-21 Panthers.
Give me Panthers 23-17.
Okay.
I'm going to go Panthers 20-14.
Okay.
Defense wins the game.
On a defensive touchdown?
Wins the game.
Or on a defensive stop?
Defense wins the game. However it happens, defense wins the game.
I'm going to give it to our defense is, with its many injuries, is still going to let up 3 touchdowns or something. I think that, or even a couple field goals. I think it's bound to happen. I think that the offense does look better. We've shown the last 3 weeks we can put up 20 points in a game. We've shown we can score 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
It's not the Falcons. It's not the Saints.
Yeah.
It's not the We've shown we can actually put points on the board. The defense is going to falter, but this Texans team is not built like the Lions, not built like the Vikings, not built like the Dolphins, to where they're going to be able to put up that many points for that long of a period of time. They're going to make their mistakes, and then I think, to your dismay, I think oh gosh. Oh, crap. I forgot his name. Our kicker. Help.
Oh, Pinero.
I think Pinero gives himself a reason. He proves that he's supposed to be our starting kicker still, with a game-winning field goal. I think that, to your dismay, he's going to prove that he still deserves a role on the team and make a game winner.
So for me, with that 23-17 score I gave, from what I'm expecting early on, I think defense is shut out. I think both defenses play well coming to start the game out early. I think somewhere in that third quarter is where you start to see the offense start to find their way. I think you see Stroud and Tank Dell probably hook up, make a play or two here and there, get a couple drives going, get some scores late. It's going to take a defensive stop at the end of the game in order to be able to win it. But I think for us,
I agree.
Offensively, I think we may jump out to a fast start because nobody's seen this version of this offense that'll be playing.
That's the biggest thing. There's
game.
no tape on it. He has a really big ability to just come out. That 10 sheet is going to be really important for both the first and the second half, and that's what I want to see. Our first half 10 sheet has gone really well. I need that second half 10 sheet. If I see one more drive that we start the second half and then we go 3 and out, I'm going to lose my mind. It kills me so much, because that third quarter, like you said, is so impactful, and I think it's going to come down to the turnover ratio. I think you've got these 2 quarterbacks that are trying to be superheroes in their team, and they're trying to outplay the other. That they've been doing since they've been in high school. They're trying to do what they've done for the last 10 years of their lives. So I think the turnover battle is really what it's going to come down to. Whichever defense can make a stand. I think both defenses are pretty much in the same space as where of the output that they have. That's where you need to see. I'm hoping Xavier Woods can get out of concussion protocol by that time. I'm hoping that Von Bell. I'm hoping that Xavier Woods can be healthy by that time. That's going to be really key, is if we have our starting safeties. And so help me God. I like that he's a local kid. Well, not a kid, local guy. But if Farley is starting there at safety again, I'm going to be really upset. Like, give Robinson a chance. You drafted him for a reason. I understand not putting Chin back there, because that's the whole point of why he's not back there.
Right.
But I think that hopefully, or hell, call Trey Boston. He's tweeting at us. He's sitting here playing golf in Rock Hill. He wants to do something, and you could easily get him on a contract tomorrow. You did it with Josh Norman, and you missed out on a chance to do it again this season. So that's what I want to see. I want to hope that this bye week give TB the time to implement what he wants to do and get these guys healthy. And of course, until then, keep pounding.